the best mentorships are not where you are the voice in someone's life, but you are a voice.
But never hire out of desperation. Like, because you're just going to fill a role, you're going to put the wrong person in because you're desperate.
If they are not the kind of people that you want to surround yourself with and present your customers with, then you have to make a change. Let's talk a little bit around things that we have done in the past in hiring that we have stopped doing because we see them as being negative or not helpful. And what I'd like to do with this little segment here is just put caution signs up for small business people and contractors that are hiring to say, hey, maybe this isn't the best approach or the way that I should go. And because we've tried these things and, we've given them our best shot and found that they're not helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my experience, it's all about knowing what you're looking for before you get into it and not hiring out of urgent need. So even before you get to the interview phase, like make sure like you've got a team set up that you're never desperate to hire. Coming from a mindset of always just looking for good people to add to my team and develop, not ever being in a place of urgent need to fill a role, is when I switched that mindset, for me, it was the biggest transition.
And so that's an easy thing to say, but how do you actually do that? Because sometimes when your work is piling up and you need the manpower, how do you control that urge?
Well, if the work's piling up, then increase your prices because your demand's going up. Yeah. Don't try and hire and fill it because and you might want to just allocate more of your admin's time to hiring people and put more resources into bringing people, and you yourself spend more time hiring, but never hire out of desperation. Like, because you're just going to fill a role. You're going to put the wrong person in because you're desperate. And like, we've had summers where there's tons of work that we're just like, we'll get to you next year or in 4 or 5 months from now. And they're like, oh, it's way too long. We're like, well, sorry. Cause I just can't, like I could have easily gone out and found subs or hired a schwackload of people. But when you're hiring out of desperation, you're going to bring people in who don't align with your values, and they'll bring a negative impression on your culture. And that brings long-term pain. So it's not worth it.
That's good.
As a complete rabbit trail to that, one of my techniques has been over the years is that with all my customers, I ask about their urgency, and I'm able to shuffle some customers and fit in urgent people. And that's one of the things that I've learned to do, which is not necessarily always able to, like the larger your company is, that it could break down protocol. But for me, I've always asked people, like, when do you need it done by? And if they're not urgent, and if they're like anytime in the next 24 months, then I keep them in this line versus the people who are urgent here, which allows me to operate exactly without having to hire to fill urgent needs, which is really helpful. And I think any way that you can manage that as a small company to still satisfy the customers that really want to go with you, but not hire out of urgency just to do that. Because ultimately then what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, is that you are then all of a sudden fulfilling their desires as a customer, but not in the way that they expected that to be fulfilled, because now your culture is not exactly what they signed up for.
Yeah. If you're forcing your expansion to handle work and you haven't taken the time to find the right people or tailor to your culture, then when you get to that job site that you've done this massive expansion for, you're not going to bring the result that you promised. And then it's now your crew culture's hurting. Now you're hurting your reputation. It's a lose in every way. So you definitely want to posture yourself and come at it from an angle of just looking for people who see who you are, see what your company's doing, and you both agree mutually that this is something you want to work towards together. Never hire just to fill an urgent role.
And this is honestly sounding like it's come from a hard place. Like you've learned this by doing it wrong.
Oh, yeah. A decade of doing it wrong. And in fact, I would say it's only into this is probably my first season as a company where I've taken this and I've made it like a non-negotiable.
Right.
And right now, I love everybody in my company. I love going to every job site. Everyone's excited to see me.
Wow.
We work together. It's amazing. And in every other season, I've always had the 1 or 2 guys or 3 guys, one of them who was around for almost a decade, almost since the earliest years.
Yeah.
That, again, great guy, good worker.
Yeah.
His and my values just didn't quite align. And it took until last year where it got to the boiling point where it was just like, listen, man, you're a great guy. I love you, but we shouldn't do business together anymore.
Yeah. Fair.
And he moved on. And that's why, like, it's so important that you primarily look for people who want to be a part of what you're doing, share this. And earlier in this conversation, I talked about my passion about hard work ethic.
Yeah.
And that's all it was to him. He believed in hard work.
Yeah.
But in a very small scale, to where he just believed in he was very empathetic, and he really catered to people.
Right.
And he was, so when I would come down on someone for not working hard enough or not contributing in a certain way, he'd be like, oh man, they're a person, you gotta, and it's just like, yeah, I know, but I'm helping them. Like this is what I truly believe is right. And just at the end of the day, even though despite a decade, he moved on, and he's just working in a different market now. And it's great guy, still love him, but we just shouldn't work together. So just because someone's a good worker, just because they've even got experience, and I would even recommend him to still work for customers. I know he does great work. Yeah. He just can't work with me.
Right.
Or my team for that matter, because it wasn't actually me that the conflict was coming from.
Sure.
It was my foreman, whose drive and values also align with mine.
Right.
And my main foreman and him just kept colliding.
Yeah.
So, and then, seasonal hires, the most pain I've had, like that was just a long-term relationship. Yeah. But the sharpest pains have come from short-term hires where I just brought in a high school student or a couple of them, desperate because we're so busy. Yeah. And I'm desperate to get work done. So I'm just bringing in anyone I can. And a couple of those guys, many, many circumstances where they're like just complaining, hate the work. It's all about them, and they absolutely decimate the culture of my crew.
Which is so interesting and not necessarily intuitive, because you feel like if you're bringing in an entry-level guy into an established culture, you would feel like the weight will be pulled by the established culture, and this young kid, no matter what they bring to the table, isn't going to make a huge change one way or the other. But what you're saying is that's not been your experience.
No, not at all. In fact, like, it's better for me to very regularly, I let people go, not because they're not capable or they don't have the skills, just because they don't have the mindset.
Right. And they're bringing the people around them down.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that is like, even just this year, again, this has been a great year, but on our island crew, we had one guy who was just one of the most skilled tradesmen I've ever hired. Yeah. And he was just very focused on himself, took credit for everything the crew was doing down there. And it was just like, sorry, man, like, we can't work together because, and the day he left, the morale of not just, it's so weird, it didn't even feel like it was just that location. It felt like the whole morale of my admin team and anyone just lifted. Wow. And it's been, it's been very freeing not having those type of people in your company. So, and the time that they sneak into my company is when I'm desperate to hire. Yeah. Is when I feel pressure to hire. Right. That's when I let those people in. So hiring in advance, I would even say hiring, having be a little overemployed. Yeah. So that you lose a guy, you can cover. Yeah. And not be in a desperate place to fill a role.
It's good.
And what are your thoughts around crash and burns that you would warn people against on the hiring side?
So we've been fortunate I've never had to let anybody go.
Oh, wow.
We're still a young company, and we're not a huge crew. And so that's a big part of it.
You've had people leave.
Yeah. We've had people move on to new opportunities, but it's always ended really positively. Okay. And that's been great.
That means your hiring strategy must be really good.
We're listening.
Well, I think it's certainly not because my hiring strategy is well developed. I think like I'm several stages behind you in terms of developing our processes and things like that. But I think we've done really well in getting people who are humble and willing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, changes everything. And so that's gone really well. I haven't had to let anybody go. But I think in terms of your question about what are things that you've stopped doing or changed in your process, one of the key things that I've recognized has been really important that I've had to either has caused me to backpedal with hires and have to go back and rehash conversations and some awkwardness, has been hiring people without a clear job description. And so now I never do an interview or a hire without a clearly written out job description that identifies all of the roles that they're going to fill, how they're going to interact in terms of the larger company structure, what the expectations are going to be, what the compensation is going to be, what benefits and all that stuff, so that what I'm trying to do is eliminate any conversations after the fact where people are going, well, I didn't know that was part of this.
Yeah.
Or I thought this was part of it. And it's not.
I thought I was going to be the boss.
Yeah. Or I thought I was going to get this big benefits package as a first year apprentice or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so having that clearly written out. So when I sit down at the interview stage, it's like what we're talking about is on paper in front of both of us. Okay. And it just keeps lines clear. And I used to not do that. I would sit down and I would just verbally explain, this is what I'm looking for. This is what you would do. But then I would forget stuff, or I would maybe not word something in a clear way. And they would walk out of that meeting with one expectation when I meant something different. And so that's something that I've stopped doing, is winging it in terms of that clarity. Now I definitely, I spell it all out and I put it on paper in front of both of us. So then if we're going to agree on anything, it's there.
Right.
Do you do that at after you've hired them, or is that a part of your actual
this is a part of the interview process?
Okay.
So I put it on I've got my set of questions that I'm going to work through with the interviewee.
Yeah.
But I put that piece of paper on the table. I give it to them and I say, this is the role that we're talking about. Then they know, because sometimes if somebody's interviewing for a position, they may not even know, you throw it something back at them and say, so do you have any questions? And oftentimes people go, no, nothing.
Yeah.
But if I lay out a detailed job description and I spell out all these different parts and pieces, then very likely they're going to go, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Or when you say that I would be working in remote locations, how often is that actually working out to be? Or those kinds of things. And it's just that it just adds a whole level of clarity to the process. So definitely before hiring. When I hire them, then we both sign that piece of paper saying this is the role that we're agreeing upon, and it's got all of the compensation and details in there. So it's our contract, but I give it to them before we agree on it so that they know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have a little story around how I prevented myself from a certain style of interview and a certain style of hiring. When I first started or bought the cabinet company that I ran for a while, I had been in business for a while, but I had never been in business to that scope before. So we had to do more hiring, and kind of like some of the evolution that you talk about. Your first 5 years, you need so and so many people. Then all of a sudden you need to bump it up. So that's a stage where you're kind of going into, I think, in your company where you're going to be bumping up that demand on yourself. And so we had this hired a manager out of another city. He came straight out of business school, young guy, had impeccable resume and handled himself very well and a good demeanor, etc. So he came in to manage. There was 3 of us that were partners owning the cabinet company at the beginning. And so our intention was to have someone manage it for us and we could all carry on with our day jobs. Then we had, I hired what I would do is I would call like CNC when I needed an admin person and say, hey, who's your best, the top of your class, basically, that's looking for a job. Can you send them my way? And I think overall that's a pretty smart way to cast a net. Like, it's not a bad thing.
CNC's a college.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Our local college here. And same thing with tradespeople. If I need an entry level tradesperson, I would call, some of the people who run the school shop classes, that kind of thing. It's a good way to say, hey, this person's competent, they can handle a tool, etc. And at the very least, if I get a recommend from a shop teacher, that's a wonderful recommend. Like, I've had some of my very top hires have come, like entry level hires have come from shop teachers saying, this person I've taught for 20 years. This is one of the top few individuals I've ever had through. That's like gold referral.
That's hard to beat,
and not a bad way to cast a net. Just throwing that out there. But in this case, so I hired some really competent, good people.
Mm-hmm.
I had I fished around the industry in town locally, talked to one of the best installers working for a competitor that I had acquaintance with, and said, hey, if you were me hiring a guy to install cabinets, who would be the top guy you'd hire? And he pointed to this one individual, and I'm like, perfect. So I went and headhunted him. Did the same thing with a sales guy, headhunted a guy from another company that was just an outstanding, knows everybody in town by name. Like, it was phenomenal. When someone would walk in, he's like, hey, Jane and John, like, how's it going? And I'm like, for real? Like, every abstract person, and everybody loved him. So I had this really, like, I hired a really strong crew.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you, man, like, it imploded on me. Like, so the manager just was getting married, newly married. The girl that I hired as admin, a little too pretty for him, I guess. And he left his wife for her almost immediately. Like, it was like, and I had asked him straight up. I said, hey, look, like, this is an attractive young lady. Are you fine with this? And he looked me in the eye and he said, yeah, I'm okay. And I'm like, okay, because that was one of the things that I was concerned about. Yeah, no, he was not okay.
Wow.
And the top installer was just heavy-handed, and everybody that didn't meet his criteria in any small way, he just demanded that I fire them. And one of the people that he demanded I fire was the sales guy that I hired. He said, he's not detailed enough for me. And being stupid and young, I didn't realize that I could hire someone to fill in the details because the salesman was phenomenal. And so, like, or just realign and have my admin person do all the detail work and let my sales guy sell, right? But I just didn't have that. So I fired the sales guy, which I regret to this day because he was unbelievable. And I've since sought him out and apologized because it was just completely wrong. And then 2 weeks later, the same installer was insisting that I fire another guy. And that was when I started to see the light. I'm like, wait a second, like, this is not working. So I then turned around and I fired this main installer, because I'm like, I'm not building my core of my company around this guy that literally is just like always giving me ultimatums. I can't do this. And he literally felt I couldn't run my company without him. And you get these people that sense this, and it's like, and I always caution about, if you feel like an individual in your company is carrying that kind of weight that you literally can't operate without them, you've got to question yourself as a business owner, because it's too much weight on them. And it also makes you too frail. Like, there's something about that's just not healthy.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that people are just meant to be slotted in and out of positions, like that we treat them like that. But conversely, when you place all your weight on one individual, man, that's not a great place to be.
That's so dangerous.
And so it's just not healthy. I just don't think it's healthy. And so all of a sudden, my manager and this girl are now having this relationship, and my main installer's gone. My salesman's gone, and I'm literally floundering. So I end up having to let go of the manager and the admin lady, because I just couldn't handle this kind of personal betrayal. And I know I didn't have the right to let them go. Like, I could have been challenged on it from the labor relations, but I just did it, and they were decent enough to like accept that. But what my big lesson is that they didn't align with where I was trying to go, or even who I am. It just didn't align with this. Like, I've been married to my wife for 27 years, and it's partially because she's amazing and partially because we're very loyal to each other. We respect our vows. Like, it matters to us. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't hire someone that has had an issue relationally, but there has to be, like, loyalty matters to me.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And so I don't think that, you know, taking the core relationships of our life lightly align well with where I'm trying to go as a company owner. And so what I realized is that if I kept that core team that I had originally, if I had kept them, all I would have attracted is the same type of people. And all of a sudden, because I really believe that like attracts like.
Yeah.
And I think that I was in this place and I saw it, and it like was crashing down around my ears, because I'm like, I can no longer hire the people that I really want, because as soon as they come in, they're just going to be like, yeah, this isn't the place for me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I think as small business people, and this is, I'm putting this out there strongly, but I've been through the fire on this, is that your initial hires and your core group that you have working with you absolutely define who you are able to hire. Like, there is no exception to this, in my opinion, because if they don't have the qualities that you admire and that you're seeking, if they are not the kind of people that you want to surround yourself with and present your customers with, then you have to make a change at the core space, because unless those people are well aligned, then the seasonal hires that you bring in, even like a kid will not tolerate. Kids are pretty honest typically. And if they feel like they're in an environment that's toxic for them, most kids have in this generation, which I really admire, they'll be like, yeah, this isn't good for me. I'm going to head out. Like, this isn't cool. And so I reestablished with this amazing tradesman that came from Calgary, and he and his wife, I hired them together, and they were absolutely stellar. Like, just stellar people. They were in a place of growth in their life. Like, they were changing certain things about them, and they were just growing, learning, eager, and they gave me a core that I could work around, and I ended up like having people that I didn't even deserve to have as hires after that. Like, they were just amazing people that I'm like, wow, I don't even think that I deserve this, but I'm gonna take it, because it's like we had a really strong, good team, and it was a lot of fun. In a lot of ways. There was other issues that I had, largely on the cash flow basis, but that's a different story. But yeah, I think that from the hiring side, I think that one of my biggest cautions is that if you're similar to what you're saying with urgency, if you're hiring because you're panicked, that's a problem. But similarly, if you're holding on to people that you shouldn't,
yes,
because you just can't see yourself going forward without them, that's a real problem when it comes to acquiring and bringing in new people into your team. It's a real problem.
So can I, just in a summary or a perspective, would you say that had you hired those initial phases more built around a culture instead of just skill sets and positions, the outcome would have been different?
Absolutely. But you know what? I just didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, like, I literally just I fell prey to this thing where the aptitude and the skill set, and for the most part, like, each of those individuals that I'm talking about, I got along with fine.
Yeah.
Like that was not the issue. Like, I appreciated them as individuals, etc. I didn't appreciate all their life choices, but I got along well with them. And so I didn't have an established culture. And what I think I failed to recognize was that while I didn't have a company culture that was established, I had a personal value system and culture that I had established that I needed to pay more attention to.
Yeah.
And in fairness to me, you know, well, number one, we're just being open because we've made mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So we're being open. But in fairness to me as well, at the time we had young kids. We were going through a growth in our, you know, personal life, trying to learn how to parent and to do that well, because my wife and I are very committed to that. So, like, the thing about small business is that there's a lot of different roles that you're filling, and at the same time your personal life is going. Like, there's things happening. And so, and you know, we're part of the community here. We value a lot of different things besides just business. And so there's all of this going on at the same time. So I think that sometimes our thoughts regarding certain aspects of what we need to do as business owners becomes clouded, not because we don't really know what we want to do in a certain area, but we just can't give it the attention in that time. So I think with this hiring guide, what we're trying to wrestle through for contracting companies, for small companies, is like, hey, if you're in that place where you feel a little overwhelmed on the hiring side, take a listen and maybe highlight some points, because maybe we can show you through some of the things that we've done right and other things that we've done wrong. Just give you some banks to your river when it comes to hiring. Just give you hey, like if you're bumping up against this and you're not sure you're hiring out of urgency, maybe you got to just like back away from that and just take a long-term approach. Or conversely, maybe you've got some people that you have hired in the past that really shouldn't be part of your team. And maybe it's time to have those conversations, because the whole idea about hiring someone and then expecting that they'll live their life with you on your company, sometimes people are meant to be there for the long term. Sometimes they're meant to fill a season. Sometimes they never should have been there in the first place. But if they're meant to fill a season and that season's over, then I think it's important to recognize that and do that in a healthy way, because it benefits both the business, yourself personally, but also in particularly the employee. If they're meant to move on and it's the time. And I've had people come to me that have been upset when I've let them go, saying, like, this is wrong. I had a guy that just aged out. He was old and he just could not, like, some days he had the strength to do his job well, and other days he just did horrible work. And so I was like, and not because of his intention, he was a wonderful person, but he just literally couldn't physically bring it to the table anymore. So I had to have this hard conversation. I'm like, man, I just think we're done. And so I didn't fire him. I just asked him to retire. And it was a hard conversation. I never heard back from him because it was tough and I was the bad guy. But 2 weeks later, he came in and talked to the guys in the back of the shop. And he told them, he said, I didn't think I was ready. But he said, over the last 2 weeks, I realized it was the right time. And so I felt, and my employees came to me and told me this, and I'm like, thank you, because I was feeling horrible, but I had to do it. And so I think that, and if it's someone that's meant to be there for the long term, conversely, you want to throw out all the stops and do whatever you can to make that as healthy a relationship as possible.
Yeah. I do think that will be another point. We should probably do a video on that as well later. But I mean, when we're talking about hiring, if you take your company and your team and your culture and it's this identity on its own, when you're hiring, you're allowing people to come in and influence that.
Yes.
And be influenced by that.
Yeah.
But also there's the other side where sometimes there's people who are in that need to leave it as well.
Yes.
So the exiting component is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because it all goes full circle. Like we're trying to bring people in to grow and do something with together. But there are times in life circumstances and things can just happen where you also really need to heavily weigh the component that sometimes people do just need to leave.
Yeah.
That them being a part of your company is bad for your company and bad for them as an individual.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that it could be easy to be listening to this and say, well, I thought we were talking about hiring and now we're all of a sudden talking about firing. But they really go hand in hand.
They do.
Like they're part of the same story. And firing is a hard word. Like we're not all the guys that like to point and just say you're fired. Like that's not in most of us. Like we don't take joy. In fact, for me, firing days are some of the hardest days that I've ever gone through, because I'm really asking myself, is this for the best of the person that I'm dealing with? Is this a wholesome decision, or is this just a knee-jerk reaction to me being lazy? And I think, like we all default to laziness if we are not careful. We all default to a place of a lack of discipline if we're not careful. And so I think that for me, firing is a soul searching time where I'm like, I want to do this right. I want to do this well. And it's part of the reason why, and this is something that I want to talk about for a little while before we wrap this up, which is the length of the interview process. Like it used to be for me that I would just interview someone, bring them in, and just believe that I was astute enough in that, whatever it is, hour, 2 hour at the most interview process to know that this is going to work. I changed that early in my career to make it a working interview where it was a couple weeks of really what I always asked is say, look, what I'm trying to do here is make sure that you're the right person for our company. I'm asking you to do the same thing from your angle and say, hey, is this the right place for me? Mm-hmm. And I want to sit down 2 weeks after you've started with me. And I don't even want to, and typically, and differently than what you've done, as far as like setting out the expectation and the compensation and stuff, I was more organic in this, and it worked for me personally, which is that I wanted to see the skill set in front of me, and I also wanted to see the value. Mm-hmm. And so I would typically not establish their wage until they had worked with me for at least a while. And that's just, and that's maybe just my lack of being able to read someone well enough in the outset. And typically I will just give someone the benefit of the doubt. And so usually I would start the wages too high when I would tell them what they're going to make immediately, and just believing they would be worth that. And you can't backtrack, because as soon as you give someone a pay cut, like in their first few months, you're basically devaluing them, and it just doesn't work. So I found for myself, and I think this is what we're trying to do with our roundtable, is give different thoughts and different personality approaches to the same issue. But for me, I would be like, let's have a 2-week interview process. We'll sit down. We'll discuss if this is a good fit. Sometimes it's so clear you don't even have to. It's like, clearly this is working. And so it's just like, yeah, you're in. But then I would also say in Canada, we have a 3-month, like, you can fire someone for no reason.
3-month probationary.
Yeah, it's a 3-month probationary, and which means that someone can leave without any notice, and you can fire someone on the spot. And what I've always said to my employees, always being after the first little while when I was young, is that we take our 3 months very seriously. We want to be sure that this is where you belong. And if you pass the 3 months, what we're saying to you is that you're now part of our company culture. We value what you bring to the table, and we will do everything in our power to make it work for the long term. And we expect you to do the same. Up until the 3 months, just beware that if it's not working, we're going to call it for what it is.
Yeah. It's good.
And what are you guys' thoughts around that?
Few different phases in our setup. We have basically we always vet it, all our applications, with a 5-minute phone call interview. And then if they get past that, we have an in-person, depending how urgent the hiring is. If I have the time, if we're looking for multiple roles, I'll actually get my staff to do an in-person vetting process again before they get to sit with me.
Okay.
Just because, again,
just the sheer volume.
Yeah, just on sheer volume. Yep. When I get in here, I want to, if we're multiple roles and we're letting more people through the phone call phase, I'll get one of my main crew members to actually come and vet through everybody. And then if they pass that, they sit down with me. Almost every time they get through that, there's very few I don't accept to the next phase. Mm-hmm. And very similar to you, I can't hire someone out of sitting and having a conversation with them. I need to know how they're it's very easy to sit in an air conditioned room and say all the right things. Sure. I need to see how they're going to perform when they're out there and the sun's beating on them and they're in the environment of our team.
Yeah.
And so we do interview by trial, or how do we word it? Tryout interviews.
Yeah. Yeah. Working interviews, essentially.
Working interviews. Yeah. And 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
By the end of that, we have a conversation, and we go from there. But even past that 3-month probationary period is a big deal, because if we always, my admin team know to notify me, hey, this person's 3 month is coming up, right? Because once, at least in our market, once you pass that 3 month, and if they're not a good fit, they're extremely hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
At that point. And then it's a lose for you and a lose for them.
Totally.
So we're very, very mindful of our new hires for the first 3 months.
And you've had a lot of people not pass the 1 week mark.
Oh man, this year, I think I've had 7 or 8 tryouts and I've got 1 who's made it.
Wow.
So, because everyone thinks they can do the job, and then they get up there And maybe they would be able to do it with some crews, but just with how our crew operates, it's like we put our head down, we move, and it's and like you got to have the right attitude. You got to
not be afraid of heights.
We had one of those. Great young kid, good attitude. Was just too scared on the job where it was. So there's so many factors. So that's why. And of those 7 or 8 kids I interviewed, they all, if I just hired them out of the gate, they would have all had potential.
Yeah.
But when you that's why we always do try them out before we commit to each other long term, is because you don't actually know until you put them into the elements. At least in my trade, I know it's different in different trades, but that's more or less our process in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just gleaning from you guys because, like I said before, because of the age of our company, size of our company, and the relational network that we have, pretty much all of my hires have been connected to other trades businesses that we have established relationships with. And so I had a really good sense for each of our hires of their work ethic and their skill level and everything before I even sat down with them for an interview.
Yeah.
And so we've never done a working interview or like an extended process like that. We've just done the pre-vetting and then the sit-down interview, and that's it. But I'm definitely taking some notes for future hires as we extend now beyond what our relational network is able to support in terms of references, because that makes a lot of sense.
Good. Well, I think that we're getting close to wrapping up here. Are there any other thoughts just in general around the hiring process that you guys have, or even a bit of a summary in your mind as far as like the joy or the sorrow of it, or any particular story that kind of comes to mind that would add a bit of light to some of what we've been discussing?
So just one thing that we haven't touched on that I know a lot of people use, and that we're just starting to get into, is there's all kinds of hiring tools like personality assessments or gift skill assessments, those kinds of things. And I've done a lot of work with those kinds of tools with established teams in coaching and things, but I haven't implemented those into the hiring process in the past, but I know that that's a common practice, that there's a lot of different assessments that especially larger companies will get applicants to go through before they even get to an interview. To say like, give us some info about your personality, give us some info about your how you work on things. So I've started implementing that into our existing team. So post-hire, getting them to take some assessments and thinking about interpersonal dynamics with building a larger team. But I know that it's a common practice for people to do that beforehand, to say, hey, if you were to join our team, what are some of the elements that make up who you are, and how would that fit with this established culture that we already have? And so I really see the value in that. I can't speak to it from experience because we're just starting that. But I'm really excited about it. And I know other businesses that are using some of those tools. And I'm convinced of the value. I'll speak from experience a year from now or something.
Fair.
We'll have to look into that a little bit.
Fair.
You've been with me through this whole journey. Who's somebody that was a really,
I think
good example for hiring?
I think that you have had the attitude of bringing on people like family, almost. Like, I think like that was the way that you started hiring, kind of like, you're going to come and be my little brother essentially, and we're going to figure this out together. And I think that you have changed that to some degree just because of some of the pain when it doesn't work out the way that you hope it does.
That's pretty accurate.
And I think that sometimes it hasn't worked out in those cases simply because there's almost a little bit of a almost too much familiarity in a sense, like where you're almost too connected to someone that it just becomes complex in some ways. And so, and I'm not saying that you can't be extremely good friends with people, but it's got to be the right personality type for that to work. Yeah. And speaking of the testing and stuff, like I think that, I think this is what we're trying to be careful about in this instructional that we're putting together, is that we're different people, the four of us. And so we have different approaches to the same issues, which means that certain things are going to work on my team that may not work on yours, and vice versa. And so I think that what I've seen you do is become just a fraction more distant. And I don't mean that in a cold way, but just like investing, but knowing where to draw the line on that investment with individuals.
Yeah.
I think, and let me be clear on this, I think that we sometimes as business owners try to be the person in someone's life. We bring on someone, we see a lot of potential, they're growing, and we try to become their person versus becoming a voice in their life. And I make a massive distinction in this. I think that even in the whole mentorship process, I think that the best mentorships are not where you are the voice in someone's life, but you are a voice. And there's just, we not big enough as people to carry other people completely. We're just not. We're not. I don't believe that that's even the way that life is intended to be structured. But I do believe that initially that was kind of your approach, was like, I will be strong enough for these people to carry them. And that has a net negative over the long term, because something will break down somewhere.
And they did.
Yeah. And it does.
Some real hurt relationships with my approach.
I would argue relationships that probably should be extremely strong to this day, that were meant to last, but suffered because of just maybe one layer extra of connectivity that just shouldn't have been there.
Oh, probably more than one layer. But the fallout of those events, now I'm still, like, me as a leader, I'm still trying to find that balance.
Absolutely.
And I am probably still too distant from some of my main guys just because of that.
Yeah,
so
for sure. And I think that in life in general, when we make a hard mistake in one direction, we tend to overcorrect. And I was in a car once that way, where a guy was hitting the ditch, and then all of a sudden we were hitting the other ditch, and it's like, that's a scary place to be. But I think that the, understanding where those lines are, and it's a tough thing. Like, I think we're intended to care about our employees. And when we hire someone, we're intended to think, okay, I'm going to invest into this person. Like, if I'm going to hire them, I am now taking on some responsibility to invest in this individual, and have my team also, as we grow, it increasingly becomes your team investing into them. And so I think that is a good and wholesome objective. But I do think, like, just looking at your career, I think that there was an overinvestment to some degree, and I think that you have been working at finding that place where you are a voice in these guys' lives, where you are a mentor but not the voice, and then developing this relationship that is strong but also not entirely reliant on one individual to, like, carry your show, or to have all this expectation placed on one or two people. That, life changes. Things happen. We haven't talked a lot around, spouses and families, but, like, these are like you're interviewing an individual, but that individual is part of a family and part of a community and part of, like, a whole set of things that we will not fully understand. And I don't believe we're meant to fully understand as bosses.
No.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is just a reflection of mine on, I think that then there was an overcorrection where you were maybe a bit cold toward your employees. And I think that they felt that. And I think you're just now, and, we're talking a 10, 12 year process here. But just now I feel like you're coming, kind of like your needle's moving back to that place of finding this place where you have camaraderie, where you invest and you believe in them. But there are certain places that you're just like, there's a health to the relationship.
Yeah. Well, and for context, like, I didn't go to business school.
Yeah.
My family, my parents and my grandparents both ran very small companies, couple employees each. And so I founded this company having no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
So it's been a roller coaster of trying to, and I think a lot of this probably tailors a little bit more to the leadership overall, and the hiring components is more the supplement of where, because when you're leading your company, you're setting your culture, you're casting your vision, you're doing all that, and then the hiring's just the gateway of who's going to be a part of this with me.
Yeah.
But they do go hand in hand. But yeah, for me in my journey, it's been a roller coaster. I'm not going to lie. A lot of the stuff I've said here has come from experience of doing it wrong. Probably more wrongs than doing it right, to be honest. But we're getting there. And where I'm sitting right now, I'm thrilled with everybody in my company.
Totally.
And where we're going. And so can't all be bad.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I believe we all feel, is that the reward of doing hiring well is so worth the challenge. It's so worth like the learning curve, and it's also worth continuing to learn and fine tune. Mm-hmm. And our hope is that we've given you some tools in this conversation to question yourself. And I think to use this well, we're hoping that you question yourself and say, you know, what pitfalls am I falling into, or mistakes that I'm repeating? What things am I doing well, and where is it necessary for me to direct my energy so that my hiring can be effective and we can see synergy, and the end term result of that is just a lot of fulfillment in life, both for yourself as well as for the people that you've hired.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
It's really good.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate your attention and look forward to your feedback as well.